Now, young lady, come on, you cannot use your ADHD as an excuse. You can focus on this trashy romance novel for hours, and you're expecting me to believe you can't focus on your homework for 45 minutes? Come on. But Mom, I guess you're right. I don't know why I can read my book forever, and whenever I look at my homework, it's like my brain just short circuits. It's probably my fault. Sound familiar? Yeah, pretty much any ADHDer who was diagnosed while still living with their parents has had this conversation at least, I don't know, about 3,000 times. So today we're gonna answer an age-old question. Why is it that sometimes ADHDers can focus for hours on end, but other times we can't focus for literally 30 seconds? Hi there, my name is Megan, and this is the Neurocuriosity Club, the only YouTube channel that I'm aware of that is specifically made for people who think they might be ADHD, they might be autistic, but they're just not sure. Let's get curious about our brains together. So there's this narrative out there amongst some parents and also amongst just strangers on the internet saying that because ADHDers can sometimes focus on things, especially things like video games, novels, or other things that are interests but not productive to like society or a job or school, it means that we are either faking or that ADHD isn't real or that it's not actually that bad. And this kind of makes sense because it's called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So we have a deficit of attention. So when we show an abundance of attention, it makes people wonder if we even have ADHD or if ADHD is even like a thing. Unfortunately, ADHD is really poorly named, and we actually don't have a deficit of attention. This fluctuation between lots of focus and no focus, that's actually what ADHD is. That is a cornerstone of the condition. If this is the first time you're hearing this, I'm sorry, but ADHD is not a deficit of attention. It is difficulty regulating that attention. AKA, you don't feel in control of how much or when you focus, which yes, can absolutely lead to a deficit of attention, not being able to pay attention to certain things, but it can also swing the other way, and it can make you focus on stuff for hours when you didn't make the active decision to do that. There's actually a really great theory that explains ADHDers' relationship to attention, and that is monotropism. Now, I made a whole video explaining what monotropism is, and you can go check that out here. But in case you're not gonna watch that video, let me give you a real quick explainer. Monotropism basically says that attention is a finite resource for everyone, regardless of if you have ADHD or not. Everyone runs out of attention eventually, but for a lot of ADHDers, we can run out of it more quickly or unexpectedly. And because attention is a finite resource, we have to decide how we're going to use it. Many neurotypical people use their attention in a polytropic way, meaning that they focus on many things, but they don't go very deep with those things. Sort of like a lamp, how it lights up the whole room, but it's not super bright in the corners, right? Many neurodivergent people, including ADHDers, often think differently. They think monotropically, meaning that we don't think like a lamp, we think like a flashlight, right? Our attention gets focused in one direction and it goes super deep, super far. Now, typically, monotropism is discussed when talking about autism, but monotropism can go with many forms of neurodivergence, including ADHD. Now, you might be thinking, Megan, hold on a second. ADHD is famous for not being able to pay attention to one thing at a time. We are known for what people lovingly or not so lovingly call squirrel brain, where we think of everything all the time. We're so scattered. Isn't that polytropic? This is actually false, and I would love to explain to you why because it's really fascinating. What are you doing? Oh, me? I'm working on a resource roundup for one of my one-on-one clients. What is a resource roundup? It's a really cool collection of Instagram accounts, academic articles, online tests they can take, podcast episode, YouTube channels, and so many more resources that pertain specifically to what we've talked about in our sessions. That actually sounds really helpful. What do you put in a resource roundup? Well, for this particular client, we are primarily focusing on shame and stories we tell ourselves about who we are and how we can tell stories that are more helpful, more honest, and more compassionate to ourselves. That's kind of awesome. Yeah, but I mean, for some of my clients, we focus a lot more on productivity. For other clients, we focus on emotional dysregulation. And for other clients, we focus on interpersonal relationships. It's super, super customizable when you work with me one-on-one. So what should people do if they're watching right now and they want their own resource roundup? They want to work with you. Oh, they can just go to the description and book a discovery call with me. I love meeting with people before I decide to work with them just to make sure we're a good fit. Oh yeah, get back to work and we'll get back to the video. Oh yeah, thanks, okay. So polytropic thinkers don't bounce from one idea to the next the way that ADHDers often do. ADHDers don't hold multiple ideas in our heads calmly at the same time. That's usually not how our brains work. We actually jump from one thing to the next. We just do so very, very quickly. So we have that singular tunnel of attention like a flashlight. It's just that it moves around a lot, which is not what polytropic thinking is like from my understanding. I would not know. I am a very monotropic thinker. From my understanding, ADHDers are a lot less like having a lamp of attention and a lot more like having a flashlight of attention that's being waved around like crazy. So here's another metaphor that I came up with that I think is pretty cool. And I think that ADHDers are a lot like those lizards that can run on water. Think of each step as a new thing we are focused on or paying attention to. It changes very quickly because if we go too slow, we're going to sink into the water. So we have to move fast. I think a lot of ADHDers have that drive to shift attention very quickly. It's just how our brains tend to work, but we still have the monotropism that tells us, okay, but one thing at a time, one step at a time. We're not like, I don't know, one of those really fast fish that like moves their whole body in the water. We are like one step, one thing, one focus at a time. So what happens if we slow down? What happens if we stop shifting our attention? I mean, if we're sticking with the metaphor, the lizard sinks into the water. And I think that's a really good metaphor for us sinking into hyperfocus. So what is hyperfocus? I feel like this word has been maybe a little bit misused. I feel like there are probably some folks without ADHD who have used this word, which is okay. I mean, language is malleable, but I think at the end of the day, hyperfocus is a really specific thing. So let's define it real quick. Hyperfocus is exactly what it sounds like. It is when your focus gets really dialed in and you become very, very focused. You devote pretty much all of your attention, like a flashlight, very monotropic, all of your attention to one thing. And when I say one thing, I mean one thing. All of that like normal stuff that you usually pay attention to, or maybe someone without ADHD would find it easy to pay attention to, like hearing it when someone calls your name, or feeling the urge to go to the bathroom, or remembering to eat something, all of that goes out the window. Now, if you don't have ADHD, this might sound maybe a little fake to you. Like, okay, people don't forget to go to the bathroom. You can make the choice not to go to the bathroom, but it doesn't just like not occur to you anymore. And that's where I think it is important to point out that ADHD is a completely different neurotype from someone without ADHD, and that it absolutely is possible and in fact common for ADHDers to enter hyperfocus and literally not notice that they have to use the bathroom until it is an emergency. And this is where I think the misuse of the word hyperfocus can be kind of problematic, because when people are saying hyperfocus to mean like, oh, I was really into something for like an hour, like that's really different than the ADHD experience of hyperfocus, which is focusing on something at the exclusion of all else. One way I like to describe it is it's kind of like we're wearing attentional blinders. It is like nothing else can get in. We literally don't even perceive it. We're not ignoring it. We just don't even realize it's there because all of our attention is on a video game or a book. Now, hyperfocus is often understood as like the exception of ADHD. Like, okay, the default of ADHD is we can't focus on anything. We're super distracted, forgetful, all that stuff. And then every now and again, randomly, we get hyperfocus, and it's like kind of the exception. And I'm gonna argue no. The rule of ADHD is not one must always be distracted. The rule is your attention and perception are both attached to light switches and are completely on or completely off at any given time. Oh, and you're not in control of the light switches. Instead, there is a bored toddler flipping them back and forth at random. There are multiple combinations of attention and perception and the light switches that we can investigate, so let's take a look at those real quick. Number one is the formula for distraction, which is where perception is turned on all the way, but attention is turned off all the way. This is where the whole squirrel thing comes from, because we're not really focused on anything in particular, and all of a sudden we see a squirrel because our perception is turned all the way up, so we're like, ah, squirrel. Yeah. Formula number two is for hyperfocus, and this is the opposite. This is where perception is actually turned off, but attention is turned on. As I mentioned before, we don't perceive our need to go to the bathroom. We don't perceive the need to eat something. We don't perceive people calling our name. All of that is turned off, and instead we are wholly and entirely focused on whatever it is we're doing. Then we have formula number three, which is a frenzied attempt to do everything at once, and this is where perception and attention are both turned on. This is a little miserable. This is usually what we end up doing when we're trying to do everything at the last minute and we want to tap into hyperfocus, but we can't get our perception to turn off. And then we've got formula number 4, which is totally zoned out. And that's where perception and attention are both turned off. So hopefully you can see now that hyperfocus is not an exception to ADHD. It is part of the rule. It is part of our experience with attention and regulation. Monotropism really helps explain how hyperfocus is possible in a person with ADHD who does tend to be distracted a lot of the time. Now, if you need some help making this monotropic thinking work for you so that you can actually get stuff done with ADHD, check out the video that's going to show up here in just a second on the end screen. And if you want to learn more about what it's like to be both autistic and ADHD with monotropic thinking, stay tuned next week for our video on AuDHD and monotropism. Yes, I know this was supposed to be a 3-part series, but I realized I really needed an ADHD episode, which means that I need to make the AuDHD episode as like a bonus episode. So it's coming. See you all next time.